13C, I had put them on the...
Some people got them last week.
Yeah, I did make them last week. So if you printed off everything from last week, you would have it already. There isn't anything extra. Okay, so chapter 12, we learned about Satan, the dragon, that ancient serpent, the devil. That was Revelation chapter 12. Revelation chapter 13, the first half we learned about the beast / Antichrist, and he is in the Hebrew direct translation, he's the wild beast that comes up from the abyss, and he is the king of the abyss. And so he's the fallen angel that possesses the body of the man that becomes the Antichrist at the middle of the tribulation. The person who's going to be the Antichrist is elected to some position of power when the first seal is opened. We won't know who he is, and we won't know when the first seal is open. As Christians, we won't know. And then in the middle of the tribulation, when the fifth trumpet is opened, that king of the abyss is released, and sometime shortly after that is where he possesses the body of that man and then he goes on to become known as the beast or the Antichrist, as we call him in our generation. And so the first half of Revelation chapter 13 was about the beast. The second half of Revelation chapter 13 is what we're going to cover today, and that's the false prophet. So if you have your notes, it should be Revelation chapter 13C, the false prophet. And we're on page 55 in your books. I don't know that we're going to need to read from your books much, so I think I have everything in the notes. But let's start out with Revelation chapter 13 and 11. That's where we first hear about the beast. Now remember, the dragon had 7 heads and 7 crowns. And then the beast also has 7 heads, but on one of his heads, because he represents all the evil from the other, and the power and the oppression and slavery, all the other evil characteristics from the other kingdoms. But his particular kingdom has 10 horns on the one head, on that kingdom. And the 10 horns represent what? Do you guys remember? What do the 10 horns represent?
10 kingdoms.
10.
Of the old Roman Empire?
No.
No. The 10 kingdoms.
Not kingdoms.
Kings.
Kings. 10 kings
That's right.
that are going to receive power along with the beast. Okay, so 10 kings. So 10 horns have 10 crowns on them, and they represent 10 kings. Okay, so the beast came up out of the sea. Remember, Satan is standing there looking at the sea, and the beast comes up out of the sea. This beast, the false prophet, comes up out of the earth. And Roberta, can I have you read Revelation 13:11 there in your notes?
Then I saw another beast rising out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb, and it spoke like a dragon. Okay, so lamb, when you look at a lamb, they're sweet little things, you know, like in one had 2 little horns, and they're just sweet and cuddly, and they're very social animals. They're soft and furry, and they're just the cutest little things. And so this particular beast that comes up out of the earth is the false prophet. He looks very somewhat attractive. He looks really normal, very approachable, very sociable, but what's on the inside, what his mouth speaks, comes from his heart. He spoke like a dragon. And and point 2 under there, another beast comes out of the earth. It spoke like a dragon, but it is a dragon in sheep's clothing, so to speak. Oh, thank you for catching that door. And it is fierce and dangerous. So that's one thing we want to know about this false prophet. He is fierce and dangerous, just like the Antichrist is. And this other beast, of course, is the false prophet. Hi, Daisy. Hi, Carmen. Come on in. Good to see you guys. And then Revelation 13:12. Annette, can you read that for us?
It exercises all authority of the first beast in its presence and makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose mortal wound was healed.
Okay, in your notes, I want you to underline the last word on that first line there. It exercises the authority of the first beast in its present and makes. Underline the word makes. It makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the beast whose mortal wound had been healed. So it forces the people. And it's also, if you look at the new modern translations of the scriptures as they get more knowledge on the translations, like an ESV version, for instance, of the Bible, it uses the word it to describe the Antichrist beast, and it uses the word it to describe the false prophet also. I want to point that out. It, the false prophet, has the same authority as the first beast, and the first beast had that fatal wound and it was healed. So we looked at the first beast, and we know that the first beast, the Antichrist, was a man of lawlessness. It threw truth to the ground. It was ruthless and violent. It was drunk with its own power and importance, and it rules the world. So the second beast, who is the false prophet, is just like the first beast in character. How lovely. Yeah. Okay, now people in general don't like to be forced to do anything, let alone worship. Worship is a very private thing, a very personal thing, and people do not like to be forced to worship. And now when us as Americans, when we read in the newspapers of other countries where they are forced to worship something or they end up getting killed, we find that a religious doctrine, and we feel sorry for those people in those countries where they have to worship a particular ruler or a particular religion. Mm-hmm. And we find in those countries where the religious dogma is used to control the population and their behavior, and we find that to be a very manipulative and oppressive form of government. No doubt about that. Mm-hmm. It's a form of dominance and slavery. Governments like this use fear and death to control the people, and then they call it worship. Isn't that interesting? They use familiar terms and words. We find that happening in our own news right here. But change what the meaning is so as to confuse and deceive people. And we see the happenings of that starting right now in our own country. Certainly that's happened in many other countries around the world that do not worship Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. And we also find that truth and love are irrelevant to these forms of government. They're irrelevant. But if you don't have truth and you don't have love, what worth does life have? Because through truth and love you have purpose, you have meaning. Our whole existence is surrounded around the truth of Jesus Christ and God and who He is and His love for us. And if you take those two components out, what worth is there? So we see kids growing up now in high school and grade school, even in colleges, the suicide rate is just skyrocketing year after year because the schools are stripping away, the idea of God, the idea of love, the idea of a predestined purpose for our lives, that someone should care for an individual, that he's not just this big ball of knowledge that, happenstance like evolution teaches. In the free world, we don't consider it to be true faith or anything worthy of worship if you're forced to worship. Worship is like love. True worship cannot be forced. It cannot be coerced. True worship is freely given. The beast and the false prophet both use lies, deceit, fear, and power. And mostly deceit and fear. Those are their two biggest things to control people of the earth. And we see the evil one doing that right now, and even in our individual lives. Even those of us who are Christians, we see, oh, hi, Jenny, so glad you can make it. We see that, what was I saying? Fear and power. We see that even in the lives of Christians, sometimes, somebody will say something and we'll have the evil one, put a thought in our head. And they'll put a thought in our head that had nothing to do with what that person actually said, but it had something to do that make us discouraged, make us feel sad, make us self-doubt, make us wonder what the truth is, and make us turn away from the God who loves us. And so those are things that Satan uses right now. And he uses all kinds of people. And even if there isn't anyone around, he'll put that thought in your head. Like for instance, I was, my group of leaders, they had all planned to go out for lunch. And they had talked about it, and I wasn't at that particular meeting. And then they're talking about where they're going and when they're going. And I wasn't invited. So I right away, Satan puts the thought in my head, oh, you're not wanted. They didn't want you there. That's why they didn't tell you about it. They didn't like you. But Satan puts that in my head right away, because what does he want to do? He wants to make me feel bad, make me feel unloved, unlovable. And he wants to put a block between me and other Christians. And so even though nobody was there, so of course me, not liking to be silent in pain, said, hey, I didn't hear about this. How come I wasn't invited to this? And then Jamie, the leader, she wrote back. She goes, oh, of course you're invited. We just forgot. We discussed it, and I just was so busy I didn't get we discussed it when you weren't there, and I just forgot to text you. Of course you're invited. I'm like, okay, I just needed to know I was loved. And so... But the point is, and then there's those are little things that Satan does in the lives of Christians. Or sometimes someone, is rude to us, and they're stressed out, or maybe they're not feeling well, and their words come out a lot harsher than they ever meant them to be, or that they understand that they're coming out that harsh, and we feel hurt about it. And so we need to calmly talk to that person, and say, and they're like, I'm like, okay, you're in a bad mood. I'm going to go over here until you can calm down, So sometimes we have to give grace to people, because we all get tired, we all get run down, and we all get sick sometimes, And then the other person eventually, when they get better, they go, gosh, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to, rag on you. And so when people come to their right mind, they realize, so we've got to watch out right now in our Christian lives, for deceits and lies and fear. Fear, oh, I'm not liked. Oh, I'm not wanted. I'm all alone. But we're not. We're not all alone. And we are loved. We're always loved by Jesus. Always. Always. So if anything ever contradicts that, and any thought going through your head, or anything that causes confusion, know that is of Satan. It is not of God. And put a godly thought in your head. Whatever is noble, whatever is good, whatever is right, whatever is worthy of praise. Think about these things. Now, when the Antichrist and the beast, the Antichrist/beast and the false prophet come into power, they're going to have lies so huge and so big that everybody is just going to be amazed at it, and they are just going to go ahead and swallow it hook, line, and sinker, and follow him like the Pied Piper right into the fires of hell. The beast and false prophet will direct all obedience and worship to the beast. So the false prophet is like the right-hand man. He's not looking for praise and worship for himself. He's directing it all, having everyone worship the beast. Jenny, do you guys have notes back there? Okay, thanks, Roberta. The beast, this is interesting about the beast, and you can see this sometimes in people who are in positions of power that are not in a humble attitude in their mind, or don't have their soul controlled by the Lord Jesus Christ. And this is what we're going to see in the beast, and sometimes we see pieces of it popping up in our world. The beast seeks power, control, worship, and dominating mankind to satisfy its appetite of itself. Ooh. Yeah, ooh. That is exactly, it wants what it wants because it wants it. Now we see that a lot in little 2-year-olds. But they don't know any better, and it's real cute in a 2-year-old. But it's not so cute when that person is in control of a lot of power. It wants everyone to adore it. The beast wants everyone to adore it and serve it, whether they agree or not. So the beast is saying, I'm right. Even if I'm wrong, I'm still right, and I want your adoration and your worship. It has the self-centered emotional maturity of a toddler with the ultimate power, wealth, authority of the world at its command. So wow, the people of the earth are in lots of trouble when he takes center stage in the middle of the tribulation. The false prophet has the same power and authority as the beast. They're both intoxicated with the power and control that they manifest over the people of the earth. And it's not enough just to control the people of the earth. They demand the heart and soul of mankind. So it's not enough to control people. They also demand the heart and soul of mankind. Very sad. They will force worship from the people of the earth. Willingly or unwillingly, people must come and worship the beast or its image. If people refuse, they will be tortured and then killed. I imagine the image of the beast is probably some type of robotic image of the beast with a complicated AI, artificial intelligence, that kills people who refuse to worship it. So with our when this was read 50 years ago, or maybe even 70 years ago, people wondered, how is it going to have an image of the beast? And, and if you don't worship that image, you're going to be killed. 70 years ago, maybe even 100, definitely 100 years ago, possibly 70 years ago, people wondered how that can happen. But the laboratories in the last 70 years, and certainly now the general public knows exactly how that can happen. Okay. Given our modern technology and advances, this would be easy to set up an image all over the world in every city and town, and you must go and worship this thing. Okay, Revelation 13 and 14a. Jenny.
It performs great signs, even making fire come down from heaven to earth in front of people, and by the signs that it is allowed to work on behalf of the beast. It, the false prophet, deceives those who dwell on the earth.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. The false prophet performs miracles and signs to deceive the people of the earth. When Jesus came performing miracles and signs, the ruling class of the Jewish people at that time said he had a demon, and that's how he's doing these signs. When he comes this time, and Jesus talked about, I come now, if you read in the gospel, I come now performing signs and miracles, and you say I have a demon. There will come someone else, and he says, and I don't come in my own name, I come in my Father's name. My Father has sent me. He goes, but later on, someone will come in their own name and perform signs and miracles, and that person you'll believe. So he was talking about the Antichrist at that time. So that's exactly what they're going to do. How does the false prophet get all the people of the earth to cooperate with this outlandish scheme? So that's really a good question. Because right now, if you pull too much shenanigans here in our country, we've got a good part of the population that's armed, and so you get any kind of shenanigans going on like that in America right now, it's not going to last real long. But how does the false prophet pull this off when he's around? Well, let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at what's happening. The people of the earth are experiencing severe upheavals and disasters within the natural environment of the earth and with their health. Remember, with the opening of the seals, there was earthquakes and famines and floods, wars, pestilences, locust outbreaks, and plagues, widespread diseases, and at the rapture, about 1/4 of the world population, which is what's considered Christian right now, about 1/4 of the population. So hopefully that 1/4 will all be raptured. Only God knows who are his own. But then all of a sudden, 1/4 of the population all of a sudden disappears. So before the tribulation even starts, there's a lot of natural upheavals with people's health, with the plagues, with starvation, famines, wars, floods. And then at the beginning of the tribulation, we've got the first 4 seal judgments before the Antichrist appears on the scene. At the first trumpet, 1/3 of the trees and all the grass is burned up. At the second trumpet, 1/3 of the sea is turned to blood. 1/3 of the sea creatures died, and 1/3 of the ships that are on the sea are destroyed. So remember what happened when there was a freighter ship in the canal over by the Persian Gulf, and it got stuck. Suez Canal, thank you. And it got stuck on an angle in there. I'm not sure how it got stuck. And none of the ships could get into the port to restock for oil, and none of the ships could come out. Not only oil, but all kinds of goods. So it was stuck there. How long was that? Do you guys, a week? Yeah. So that really impacted, I mean, our gas prices shot up, like 10 cents a day for a while there. Of course, they're back up there again. But during that time, the countries all over the world were lacking in all kinds of supplies because of that one ship that was destroyed on the sea. Well, 1/3 of the ships are going to be destroyed during the second trumpet. And then the third trumpet, when that is sounded in the first half of the tribulation, the fresh waters, lakes and rivers are going to be poisoned by wormwood, something that falls from the sky, and it falls on the fresh water supply, and many people die. It doesn't say how many, but you know you can't go 3 days without water. We all have to have water. And then the fourth trumpet, 1/3 of the sun, moon, and stars don't shine anymore. So if you take a cloudy, rainy day, I'm not sure if that equates to 1/3, but that's how it is from that point on. There's never a bright, sunny day. So people have all that going on, and then add to that, when the fifth trumpet is sounded, we have these agonizing scorpion-type stings. Remember when the fifth trumpet's open, the demons from the abyss are open, they come out and sting everybody who does not have the Holy Spirit in them. And there's still continuous war. And the beast is shot because some people recognize that he is the beast, that he's the Antichrist, just like when Hitler came to power, and a lot of his generals and a lot of the people in politics, they knew he was wicked. They also knew as the war kind of got on that he wasn't going to win the war, that Germany was going to lose, and they wanted to cut their losses and get rid of Hitler because he was going to destroy the country besides the whole world. And they were seeing that he was so evil, and they said there were many attempts on Hitler's life to get rid of him. And you all can read about that, you know about that in history. Same thing's going to happen with the Antichrist, only somebody does manage to get off a shot to his head. And we read in Zechariah that it goes through his right eye, and then obviously the right side of the brain is going to affect his left arm. So, and so we have this, and he comes back to life. Anybody who's got a headshot, we know they usually are in a coma, or they're not in good shape if they do wake up from a coma. They're not in any condition to do anything. But he comes back to life, just like in Hollywood, and he's as good as gold. And so some people are amazed, the people of the earth are amazed at the beast and see a glimmer of hope in all this turmoil because he's performing miracles. We've got all this turmoil going on in the earth, and the people's world is upside down and inside out. The people are terrified, they're confused, and all this stuff is happening so fast, because this is happening like within 3.5, 4 years time since the tribulation started. So their hearts and minds are ripe for a leader who can offer hope and appear to have supernatural power. So the people of the earth are easily deceived. The truth has been thrown to the ground. The prophecies of God have been ignored. And when you ignore the Holy Scriptures, you can't discern between truth and lies anymore. Because the Holy Scriptures are truth. And when you ignore those, or you call the Holy Scriptures irrelevant, or you call them false, then you have no compass, no main point with to measure anything else against. And so We see that the truth of the Holy Scriptures and the truth about Jesus Christ and who he is have been disregarded. The truth has been redefined. Again, redefined. Truth is relative. And we see that happening right now today. They're redefining what truth is. It's relative. Your truth is different than my truth. As Caesar said, in the days, what is truth? Okay, we're coming back around. As Solomon said in Ecclesiastes, what has been done will be done again. What has been before will come again. There's nothing new under the sun. So truth is confused with lies. We see that happening today. Lies are promoted as truth. We see that happening with our, the sexual movement and the perversities and all the different directions that it's gone in. It's no longer considered a perversity or an abnormality. Now it is, that's considered a normal lifestyle. So we're calling things that are wicked, we're calling them fine, not wicked. So lies are promoted as truth. The people believe the lies as if it were the truth because they have rejected the author of truth, who is Jesus Christ. Since the people of the earth do not know the truth, Jesus Christ, they cannot discern the truth from the lies. They can no longer tell what is truth and what is lie. And even today, it's hard to tell with some of our news. What is truth? You've got to research a lot of different news stations and newsreels, and you've got to find out who you can trust as a character and look back to them and several others that you trust as truth and weigh off, and kind of sift through things to find this truth. So even today, we're struggling with this. When we're in the middle of the not us personally, but when people are in the middle of the tribulation, the Antichrist will totally control the media. And there will be no truth. The only truth will be the relative truth that the beast puts forth as truth. So people will have nothing to compare it to, and they won't have the Holy Scriptures, and they won't have the Holy Spirit to know how to discern. And just as Napoleon and Hitler both deceived and seduced their respective nations, so will this Antichrist/beast deceive and seduce the whole world. The Antichrist will come with greater power, bigger lies, and even a display of supernatural power. The unbeliever will be easily deceived. The great masses of people will more easily fall. This is a quote that Adolf Hitler had said, and it's on a book, I think, or an article that he wrote on deceit. And Adolf Hitler said the great masses of people will more easily fall victim to a big lie than a small one. Isn't that interesting? And so the Antichrist will surely come with that. Okay, Matthew 24:24. Barb, can you read that for us, please?
For false Christs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and miracles to deceive even the elect, if that were possible.
Okay, the elect are people who are Christians who accepted Jesus Christ after the rapture. They're in the tribulation. So anybody who is a Christian before the rapture, everybody is raptured who's a Christian. So there's no Christians immediately after the rapture. There's not one Christian on the face of the earth. So anyone who becomes a Christian after the rapture, they're what's classified as the elect here. They're people who accepted Jesus as their Savior during the tribulation or right after the rapture. Okay, I guess we do have to turn to our books. Turn to page 158, and everybody take a verse from here on page 158 in your books, and we're going to read Mark 13:19 through 23. I bet you guys never thought we'd get to the middle of the book. We're at the middle and winding our way down here. Okay, Christy, let's start with you. Take a verse on page 58 and get my glasses so I can see. And read, it's at the top there, and just take a verse.
Because those will be days of distress unequaled from the beginning, when God created the world until now, and never to be equaled again.
Wow. So the stress that's going to happen and all the killing and the bloodshed and the forcing of worship, the throwing of truth to the ground, and then add to that the genetic manipulation that's going to be done, that's already being done right now to plants, animals, and people, and that's going to be multiplied exponentially during the tribulation. And so God says those days of distress have never been before on the earth.